you considered the messages your outfits send? What do you think your clothes say about you? See, style is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. Every day you make choices about what you're going to wear, but what are you communicating? Welcome to Above and Beyond Style. I'm your host, Maria DiLorenzo, and in 2019, I founded MFD Style, where I provide a unique, intuitive approach to personal styling for those ready to embrace a more meaningful look. With this podcast, I'll uncover key elements of where spirituality, psychology, and style intersect, revealing how you can make intentional wardrobe choices that reflect who you really are. So let me ask you, are you ready to transform into your authentic self? Then it's time. Come with me on this journey, and together we'll take your style above and beyond style. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Above and Beyond Style. So this week, I really want to talk about something that comes up time and time again as I work with people, clients, even friends, family. This is something that is super, super common, and in some ways really want to normalize for people about our own self-talk narrative and learning to really shift this self-talk narrative. And so want to give you some examples about where this all comes from. So when I work with clients, obviously so much of the wardrobe consulting space is around body and helping people really see their bodies in different ways. We've all had an extraordinary number of messages and lessons and beliefs sort of come at us about our bodies, really from our youngest, probably childhood memories. And I think when I work with clients, it's an interesting space for me to be able to hear oftentimes a lot of commonality in the ways that people talk about their bodies or make comments about their bodies. So I want to sort of normalize and validate that for people, that if that is something for you as you really think about wardrobe and personal style, if maybe that's an obstacle. Maybe your thoughts around your body and your physical body are difficult for you, and having some sort of, reconciliation with your body has not been achieved yet. And so today's episode, I really want to kind of dig in a little bit about where maybe some of those beliefs come from, how we might be able to reframe or shift these beliefs. And maybe there's some ways that you can embrace a different narrative when it comes to your body. So, as I talked about, those messages come from a lot of different sources. And one of them, of course, is our own thought processes and our own ego and intellect that is telling us things all day long to keep us alive and safe. And some of those messages, as I'm sure you're very aware, aren't always very helpful or aren't always as loving or compassionate as perhaps we might even give to someone else. The messages in our own heads and our own minds about ourselves can often be really harsh. And I am speaking at this from personal experience. I am someone who has really battled pretty much my whole life, not even just necessarily about my body, but about being really hard on myself and having some of those self-talk messages be pretty tough. I mean, certainly things that I would never say to other people, or especially anybody I cared about or love. And being able to intercept and pay attention to those messages has been something that only in the last few years have I really been able to sort of not necessarily fully overcome, because I am human and that's a natural, realistic response, but to pay attention to those opinions and that narrative when it shows up. And when it shows up, what do I do with it? Do I entertain it? Do I believe it? Do I act upon it? Or do I actually say, no, you're actually not even true? And that belief, wherever it may have come from, doesn't actually serve me anymore. And I think this is a really important just for everyone to sort of sit back, and if there is anything in your own self-talk narrative that is not compassionate and loving, to pay attention to where that opinion comes from. Was that something that you formulated about yourself from a certain experience, or perhaps you're not being forgiving of yourself from a certain circumstance? Or are these opinions that other people imprinted on you? Are they opinions from childhood, from your parents, from friends, neighbors, people that we're in relationship with? Sometimes we get conditioned to believe the things that people say to us, especially about our bodies. And I think that can be a really important point to just notice and pay attention to, and to really try to counteract when it comes to dressing and our wardrobe. And I think whenever you have an opportunity to notice some of those messages, where did they come from? Why are they there? And then start to pay attention to how you might be able to shift that narrative, and to pay attention to what is that about, and how can I reframe that narrative to actually serve me better? Now, one of the things that I have been confronted with many, many times during this pandemic and after, both personally and with my clients, is about our bodies have changed. Let me say that again for anybody who maybe needs to hear that. Our bodies are changing, and it's okay that our bodies are changing. And I think in many, many circumstances, people feel a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of frustration and anxiety over the mere fact that some of these external circumstances have impacted us physically, psychologically, emotionally, and our bodies don't lie. So the things that we've been managing and working through over the past however many years now, it's showing up in our bodies. My body too. I am not excluded from this conversation. And I think something that I'm noticing every time I've talked to clients who are really struggling in this space about a shifting or a changing body is that there's a belief that it's bad, that changing your body is bad. And recognizing that as humans, our bodies go through so much, and we have such capacity and resilience in our bodies. And it is really extraordinary, especially among the women that I know who have given birth and gone through some incredible changes in their bodies, and to really help them and all of us see the value that our bodies hold, no matter what our weight or the number is on the scale, or the ways that weight perhaps has shifted or changed. This is something that to me feels really normal. And I want to normalize for everyone that's listening today, because when we get dressed, we're dressing bodies that are changing. And I want you to feel like it's okay to change the narrative about that body changing, that it isn't always a bad thing, that our bodies are ebbing and flowing as we go through our human experience. And the beautiful part of wardrobe is to recognize that, there aren't a lot of people in the world that can shop off the rack, that can walk into a store, they pick up something in their quote unquote perfect size, and it fits exactly how it's supposed to fit. And that to me is pretty abnormal. I don't know a lot of people that can do that. And so we've been conditioned to understand and think that we can go to a store or we can shop online and find something and it will always be perfect. And if it's not perfect, that means there's something wrong with us. As opposed to, and I won't get into this on this episode, but the fashion industry standards around sizing and shape and fit are very complex and very inconsistent, which makes purchasing clothes that fit our bodies really hard, which is often why many, many people want to work with someone like me as a stylist to help work through that process, help them find clothes that really do fit and complement their bodies. But I'm getting off track here for a second, because part of what I want you to know is that what comes up in those instances for people when clothes don't fit or something isn't right about the way their wardrobe is working for them, we immediately go to the belief that there's something wrong with us. And this is really where I want to help everyone, myself included, reframe and change this narrative about our bodies, and reframe and change that self-talk to be much more loving and much more compassionate, so that we can intercept when something shows up, a message shows up in our brain that tells us, ooh, you're not on a good track, or, oh, that doesn't look good on you. This is why. Like, look at that curve in your body, or that extra weight in your belly, or the way that your arm is hanging, right? Like, the criticism that I have witnessed with my clients in this very vulnerable space as we've gone through wardrobe and really worked to help them find the wardrobe that best serves them, I hear the messages that people say to themselves. And I really try to very gently work with people to help them hear, do you hear how you're talking to yourself? Do you hear the way that you believe about your body and about yourself? Are there ways then that we can intercept that and change and reframe and move that narrative to being more loving and compassionate? And I'm here to tell you that there are ways to do this. And I'm going to give you some strategies, and I'm going to give you some language that I want you to maybe try and experiment with a little bit, because I think if we can embrace more of these self-loving messages, we will start to change and intercept that ego, that intellect that is telling us that there's something wrong with us. We're not good enough. It's not beautiful enough. It's not valuable enough. It's not worthy enough. That is often translated in the ways that we get dressed and how we feel in our clothes. So for me, and some of these might sound a little silly, but I want you to maybe practice these for yourself. And honestly, nobody has to hear you doing them. So it could be a very quiet, kind of insular experience if you're embarrassed, or maybe you're nervous about your partner hearing you do or say some of these things. Don't worry about any of that. Remember, this is about you changing your self-talk narrative, and you have control and power to do that. And I really want to have you feel the experience of what it is like to intercept some of those negative thoughts and replace them with things that are actually really beautiful and loving about yourself. So my first one is actually, I can't take credit. It is one of my closest best friends, Lisa, has given me this little mantra strategy, and I've been doing it for years. And I'm telling you that it takes time for these strategies to really take effect. So please don't feel anxious or nervous if you're not feeling immediate impact, or you're finding it to be hard to kind of either see the effect or to stay with it. I just want you to stay with it, because Lisa gave me this little mantra and I stay with it quite a bit. And it has sort of, over time, it sort of smooths the edges of some of my negative self-talk. And the first is, when I wake up in the morning, many of us, I'm sure, do this, but you go in front of the mirror and maybe you're brushing your teeth or washing your face. I make it a habit to say, much like you would if you were partnered or you have someone else in your home that you live with, you might say, good morning, right? Well, I will say, good morning, Maria. I love you. Good morning, Maria. I love you. Now, again, I know that might sound a little crazy and a little like, oh goodness, but trust me when I say that you are changing your neurobiological chemistry by giving yourself loving, affirming beliefs first thing in the morning. And oftentimes, I don't know how many of us wake up and start our day maybe with somebody telling us we love us, right? That I hope you have that. But if you don't, you should be able to provide that kind of love and affirmation to yourself. So good morning, Maria. I love you. So try that tomorrow morning. Get up and you can say it to yourself quietly. You don't even have to say it out loud. I say it out loud because I'm a verbal person. I'm a verbal processor. That's important to me. Another strategy that has really worked for me, and again, I can't take full credit for this. Some of this I assimilate from other teachers, other gurus, other just really beautiful people in my life who have helped coach me and given me so much context and life lessons to really draw from. When something comes up like a negative self-talk message, I might hear that message come in, and what I say to myself is, nope, old story. I choose the new story. It's that simple, right? Like, oh, I don't know. My hip is really, they're too curvy. Nope. Old story. I choose the new story. My hip looks great. It is as it is. It's beautiful. It's strong. It gives me the power to stand in my leg, right? Like giving yourself the new story. And by intercepting, I'm telling you, if you do that enough, it's amazing how your mind gets accustomed to, like, when the negative self-talk shows up, you can literally put a little blockade on it and change the direction. Okay. The other thing that I am starting to do more is some real mantras in my own prayer and meditation practice. And I don't know if you have one, but it's something really simple. And if you're someone who really maybe struggles with stillness or quiet, I find mantras to be a really helpful way for me to stay focused and to stay present in my body. And I think these practices really do help us get more comfortable with who we are in our own physical bodies. A mantra that I have recently adopted and started to use more in my own practice is this statement: I radically accept myself in this present moment. I'll say that again. I radically accept myself in this present moment. Because what those negative self-talk messages do for us, especially around wardrobe and style and dressing, is they tell us that who we are in this moment isn't good, or something's wrong, or that we're not feeling quite in ourselves. And by shifting that and going to this mantra of I radically accept myself in this present moment, recognizing that who I am right now is perfect, perfectly imperfect, because we're human, right? And I think that this has helped me really like ground and sort of anchor to the present moment, and knowing again, like, oop, there's the old story. Nope, new story. I am radically accepting myself in this present moment. I don't know how many of you know Young Pueblo. He is an author and a writer and sort of a spiritual, meditative person, and has written a couple books. And one of his books most recently was given to me by a very dear friend, called Clarity and Connection. And one of the lines in his book I'm going to read for you stands out for me about this too. He says, embracing yourself as you are reinforces your worth and decreases the friction in your mind. I'll say that again. Embracing yourself as you are reinforces your worth and decreases the friction in your mind. So, friends, this is something when we are getting dressed, there's that friction that sometimes comes up for us. And as I said, I've seen it so many times. It happens to me too. I don't want to exclude myself from this conversation because it's true. I battle those voices and those beliefs too. And part of what helps me move through them and past them and heal them is to pay attention to the fact that if I can embrace myself as I am and love myself and embrace some of those more compassionate, loving messages, shifting that narrative allows me to see myself sort of with different eyes. The lens changes. I start to notice things about myself and my body that I appreciate, as opposed to where I'm critical or where it doesn't feel quite good enough or healthy, or whatever the sort of the norm is in my belief system that I'm not meeting. So I felt it really important to talk to you today about that self-talk narrative because it comes up so much around apparel and wardrobe and clothing. And especially for those that I have had the privilege of being connected with in a client relationship, I am in front of and witnessing so many of these messages and these narratives. And if I can do anything to encourage you today, it would be to pay attention to when those messages show up. See if you can notice when they happen and try to just gently push it away. Nope. That's actually not true. That's not a belief I want. No more old story. And start to embrace some of the more loving and compassionate things that you would say to anyone else you loved, right? Think about your son or your daughter, a parent, your best friend, your neighbor, anybody that you care about, how loving and compassionate you would be to them. What would it feel like if you actually were that loving and compassionate to yourself first? And this to me is really where it all stems from, how the self-love and self-presentation are so so integral to one another and are so connected to one another that you start to see how your self-love is expressed through the way you talk to yourself and the ways that you might show up in your wardrobe. So hopefully these takeaways and these techniques are helpful to you, and would love to hear if maybe you have a strategy or maybe you have your own mantra that has been really helpful to you. I'd love to hear from you, to hear what that is so I can share that with our community. I think this is how we build that resiliency and that sort of toolkit for ourselves around a healthy self-talk narrative. So go be gentle with yourselves, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed what you've heard, I would appreciate you taking the time to leave a review on the podcasting platform you're using and share this episode with others who you think might really enjoy these conversations about personal style. For more information all about MFD Style services, you can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com, on Instagram at mfd_style, where I post almost 5 days a week, or send me an email at maria@mfdstyle.com. I also have a weekly email I send to subscribers, so I will include the link to that sign up in the show notes. So until next time, friends, remember to love yourself and then love yourself some more.